Up until that night, my life had been steady, predictable, like a well-worn path with no warning signs of the disaster ahead. After 20 years of marriage, my wife, the 39-year-old mother of our 2 daughters, dropped a bombshell that sent my world into a tailspin. With an eerie calm, she looked me in the eye and told me she had plans to go on a date with a coworker the next evening. Amanda and I had been together since we were barely out of high school. Just a year into dating, she got pregnant with our first daughter. We were young, sure, but we were crazy about each other. Without a second thought, we tied the knot, and 7 months later, Ava was born. Our marriage had been filled with love, passion, and plenty of joy, made even stronger by our daughters, who absolutely adored us. Meanwhile, my landscaping business, which had started from nothing, flourished into a multimillion-dollar company, giving us a life I had once only dreamed of. Then, out of nowhere, Amanda shattered it all with her confession. She admitted she had been struggling with unhappiness and depression ever since the kids left for college. I hadn't seen it. To me, our marriage had been solid, unshakable. Hearing her say otherwise felt like a punch straight to the gut. She told me she had confided in Eric, some guy from accounting, a name I had never even heard before that moment. She painted him as a friend, someone who had been there for her emotionally, someone she had leaned on during her struggles. She had kept all of this from me, never once letting on that she was unhappy. Knowing she had turned to another man for comfort stung, but realizing she had an emotional attachment to him, that was a whole different kind of betrayal. Eric, a married man with 3 daughters of his own, had played the part of the kind and understanding coworker. In reality, he was nothing but a manipulative predator, someone who preyed on vulnerable, married women like Amanda. "Robert," she said, her voice softer now, "I had to tell you. I don't want to keep this a secret. I'm going on this date for myself. I know it sounds selfish, but I need to see what else is out there. Just one night. Please, try to understand." Everything in me wanted to explode, to call her out for her sheer selfishness. But I held back. Amanda had always been stubborn. Once she made up her mind, no amount of reasoning could change it. Instead, I sat there in silence, swirling the scotch in my glass, watching her sit nervously across the room. Without a word, I emptied my glass, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. "Robert, don't you dare ignore me," she cried, her voice shaking. "This is happening. I needed to be honest with you before anything happened. I would never cheat on you. I swear, I'll tell you everything. We've always been open with each other, and I refuse to lie to you, darling." I stopped just for a moment, turning to look at her. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but in that moment I felt nothing for her. Not love, not anger, just nothing. Without a word, I went upstairs, threw a few clothes and toiletries into a bag, and headed back downstairs. Amanda followed me, her sobs echoing through the hallway as I reached the garage. "Robert, don't go. Please. Everything will be fine. It's just one date. One night, that's all I'm asking for. After 20 years, can't you give me that?" I shook my head, my chest burning with disbelief and fury as I got into my car. I didn't say a word as I pulled out of the driveway, her desperate cries fading into the night. That Thursday, I checked into the Ritz-Carlton. I didn't care about the price. $100 a night felt like a small price to pay for some peace of mind while dealing with her betrayal. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with her calls and texts, but after sending one final message, "I won't be reachable until I'm back Saturday," I blocked her number. By Friday morning, I had cut off all contact. I instructed my secretary to block her calls and told the building's security not to let her through the doors. The wheels of my plan were already turning, and I wasn't about to let anything slow them down. I've always been a man of action, the kind of guy people rely on when things go sideways. At work, I'm the one who steps up and finds solutions. Among my friends, I'm the guy who gets things done. But at home? I had been too accommodating, too willing to make sacrifices just to keep Amanda happy. I had spent 2 decades treating her like royalty, and now I was finally realizing that had been my biggest mistake. The next call I made was to my brother, a detective down in Miami. I laid everything out for him, every last detail, and without hesitation, he put me in touch with Nathan Reed, a private investigator. "Nathan," my brother said, "this is my brother Robert. He needs surveillance on his wife tonight. We need everything, who she's meeting, where they go, and whatever dirt you can dig up on this guy. Can you handle that?" Nathan agreed without a second thought, promising to have someone tail Amanda and keep me updated throughout the night. My brother's connections were proving to be invaluable, and I fully intended to use every advantage I had. That evening, as Amanda primped and prepped for her so-called date, I put the finishing touches on my own plan. If she wanted to test the waters, then I'd make damn sure she knew I had options too, and I'd do it in style. Through a recently divorced friend, I arranged the company of a high-end escort. She was discreet, stunning, and exactly what I needed to make a statement. For 20 years, I had put Amanda on a pedestal. That chapter of my life was over. Now, it was her turn to feel what it was like to be the one left behind. Meanwhile, Amanda had convinced herself I was just being dramatic. It's just one night, she thought. He'll sulk, but he'll get over it. Things will go back to normal. She was certain that a little charm and sweet talking would smooth everything over. But when she walked into an empty house that Friday evening, a flicker of doubt crept in. For a brief moment, she actually considered canceling her plans with Eric, picking up the phone, and asking me to come home. The thought lingered, but the thrill of the evening ahead quickly drowned it out. She had already imagined how the night would unfold, and she wasn't about to back out now. Determined, she ran a hot bath, letting the steam relax her muscles as she carefully shaved her legs. Afterward, she smoothed on her favorite scented lotion, the one I had always loved. Seated at her vanity, she took her time applying makeup, carefully crafting a sultry look that brought a smirk to her lips. Once her hair was styled to perfection, she reached for a brand new dress, short, bold, and never worn before, the tag still dangling from the hem. She draped the dress over the mirror and grabbed the stockings she had bought earlier that morning. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she slowly rolled them up her legs, fastening them to a garter belt she had never once worn for me. And then an old memory surfaced. She could see me, clear as day, on that long-ago Valentine's night, the excitement in my eyes when I had brought home the sheer lingerie I had picked out just for her. She had scoffed at it, dismissed it as tacky, told me I was cheapening our relationship. And yet here she was, wearing something even more provocative, but for another man. The irony struck her hard, like a slap across the face. For the first time that night, she hesitated. Standing in front of the mirror, she studied her reflection. A small voice in her head whispering that maybe, just maybe, she was making a mistake. Should I cancel? She wondered. Is this really what I want? But before that guilt could take root, she buried it deep. She refused to let my words, my accusations of betrayal, weigh her down. With a steady hand, she zipped up the silky dress, deciding against a bra. The fabric clung to her in all the right ways, highlighting every curve. She turned slightly, admiring the way the black nylons made her legs look impossibly long. Eric won't be able to resist, she thought, giving herself a twirl in the mirror. But she assured herself over and over again that this was nothing more than an innocent night out. Just dinner, just dancing, nothing more. Yet deep down, she already knew the truth. For weeks, Amanda had been caught up in the anticipation of this night. Eric had occupied her thoughts constantly, and now the moment had finally arrived. Despite Robert's reaction, she was determined to enjoy herself. After all, hadn't he always let her have her way? Just as she finished getting ready, her phone rang. It was Robert. Against every ounce of pride he had left, he was making one last attempt to save their marriage. He had spent the entire evening wrestling with his emotions, agonizing over what to do. After hours of torment, he had reached a painful conclusion. If begging was what it took, he was willing to do it. Amanda, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. She exhaled softly, as if she had been waiting for this. Robert, I'm so glad you called. I miss you so much, and I still love you deeply. When are you coming home, sweetheart? Robert's voice wavered. Amanda, I love you too, more than I can even put into words. That's why I'm calling. I can't stand the thought of losing you. Please, don't go on this date. Stay home and I'll come back right now. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. If I failed you in some way, I'll fix it. Just give me a chance. Please, Amanda, for the sake of our marriage. For the first time, she hesitated. His voice, raw with desperation, stirred something inside her, a strange mix of guilt, sympathy, and an unexpected sense of power. Robert had always been strong, confident, in control. Yet here he was, pleading with her. And deep down, she knew how much he loved her. She knew, no matter what, he would forgive her. Oh, Robert, she murmured, her voice laced with affection. You know I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I need to go through with this tonight. It's not about us. It's something I need for myself. Please try to understand. It's just one night, just dinner and drinks with a friend, nothing more. I'll be home tonight, and tomorrow we can talk. You'll see, this won't be a big deal, I promise. I'm yours, Robert. Always. But I can't cancel. Not now. A crushing silence followed. Robert stood there, gripping the phone, his mind spinning as the reality sank in. He had lost her. Amanda ended the call and stared at her reflection in the mirror. With careful precision, she wiped away the tears threatening to smudge her makeup. "I know he thinks I'm being selfish," she whispered to herself. "But I need this. I just hope he'll forgive me." Back at his hotel, Robert sat on the edge of the bed, his body tense, his thoughts tangled in a storm of fury and heartbreak. Despite his desperate plea, Amanda had made her choice. She was going, no matter how much it tore him apart. His phone buzzed. It was Nathan, the private investigator. Nathan had been parked outside their home, watching as Amanda got ready for the night. The moment Eric pulled into the driveway, Nathan snapped a photo of his car and sent Robert the license plate details. By the time Amanda and Eric left for their date, Robert already had Eric's home address and phone number. As Amanda slid into Eric's car, a wave of guilt washed over her. She turned to look at him, trying to shake off the unease creeping into her chest. "What's wrong?" Eric asked, glancing at her with concern. She sighed. "I don't know. Robert called earlier, begging me not to go. I feel awful. I think I've already let him down." Eric, ever the smooth talker, reached over, offering a reassuring smile. "Amanda, it's okay. We don't have to do this if you're not comfortable," he said, his voice gentle, measured, calculated to ease her doubts. "But I promise it's just dinner between friends. I'd never want to come between you and your husband. I value our connection too much for that." His words were carefully chosen, expertly designed to soothe her conscience. Amanda hesitated for only a moment before nodding, allowing herself to believe him. But deep down, she knew tonight would change everything. Sensing her uncertainty, Eric pressed on, his voice as smooth as silk. "How about this?" he suggested, flashing an easy smile. "We'll just have a nice dinner and then I'll take you home. I'm sure Robert wouldn't mind you spending a little time with a friend." His confidence, his reassuring tone, it worked like a charm. Already dressed, already too deep into the night to turn back, Amanda let go of her hesitation. Eric had convinced her. This wasn't anything serious. Just two colleagues sharing a meal. At least, that's what she told herself. By 7 o'clock, Amanda and Eric were well on their way to a downtown restaurant, completely unaware that they were being watched. Nathan, the private investigator, remained in pursuit, feeding Robert a steady stream of updates. Every moment of the evening was documented, photos of them laughing over dinner, stealing glances, holding hands. The evidence only became more damning as the night progressed. From the restaurant, they moved to a dance club where Nathan captured more incriminating shots, Amanda and Eric slow dancing, her body pressed close against his hands resting where they had no business being. Their playful flirtation soon escalated into something undeniable. Then, the moment Robert had been dreading arrived. The first kiss. Nathan had the proof. By sunrise, Robert had everything he needed, photographs, videos, indisputable evidence of Amanda's betrayal, all recorded in painful, unforgiving clarity. By 8 that evening, unable to hold back his fury any longer, Robert picked up the phone and called Amanda's father, Charles. Charles wasn't just his father-in-law, he was a longtime friend, a regular golfing partner, someone Robert had always respected. "Hello, Charles." "It's Robert," he said, his voice measured but heavy. "Hey, Robert. We still on for Sunday?" Charles asked, his tone lighthearted, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. Robert hesitated for a moment, then exhaled. "I don't know, Charles. I need to tell you something." There was a pause before he forced out the words. "Amanda is out on a date with a coworker right now. I thought everything between us was fine, but she decided she needed more." His voice was thick with sorrow. "Charles, I love you and Karen, but I can't overlook this. Our marriage is over. She broke the vows we made, and I can't forgive the kind of betrayal. You deserve to hear the truth from me." Silence. Charles was clearly struggling to process what he had just heard. When he finally spoke, his voice was uncertain. "Robert, are you absolutely sure? That doesn't sound like my daughter." "I'm certain," Robert replied, his tone firm. "I hired a private investigator. Amanda is with this man right now, betraying not just me, but our family. I hate saying this, Charles, but you needed to know." A heavy sigh came through the receiver. "Robert, I'm so sorry. Please, don't make any rash decisions. I know Amanda loves you. Maybe there's still a way to fix this." Robert closed his eyes, shaking his head. "I've already made my decision, Charles. I'll call you soon about rescheduling our golf game. Right now, I just need to get through this weekend." Ending the call, Robert set his sights on his next move. With the address Nathan had provided, he drove 20 minutes across town to Eric's house. There was one more person who deserved to know the truth: Eric's wife, Rebecca. When the door opened, Robert found himself standing face to face with a striking woman in her 30s. She wore tight jeans and a delicate lace top that accentuated her figure. But it was her eyes, warm, trusting, that made him hesitate. "Mrs. Hayes," he asked, his tone serious. "Yes," she replied, her brow furrowing slightly. "Is something wrong?" Robert chose his words carefully. "Eric is fine," he assured her. "But I need to talk to you about something important. May I come in?" Rebecca hesitated for only a moment before stepping aside, allowing him inside. Once they were in the living room, Robert wasted no time. "I hate to bring this to your doorstep," he said, his voice steady but laced with quiet anger. "But your husband, Eric, is on a date with my wife as we speak." Rebecca froze. "Amanda admitted she's been leaning on him for emotional support," he continued. "And tonight, they crossed a line." Rebecca's face went pale. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Eric told me he was at his Friday night card game." Robert nodded grimly. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't sure. I had them followed by a private investigator." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through the pictures before holding it out for her to see. "I have photos and videos." Rebecca's breath hitched as realization set in. Her eyes filled with tears, her shoulders trembling as she turned away, unable to look at him. Robert sighed, his voice softening slightly. "I'm really sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you deserve the truth." Rebecca covered her mouth with one hand as the first sob escaped. She squeezed her eyes shut, as if doing so could block out the reality in front of her. Robert had seen enough. He turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the doorway, her quiet sobs echoing behind him. 2 marriages had just been shattered. But Eric had made his choices. And Robert? He was done being the fool. Now, Amanda would have to face the consequences. The next morning, Robert sat up in bed at the Ritz-Carlton, a cup of coffee in hand as he scrolled through the investigator's photos. Each image cut through him like a blade. Amanda had come home around 1 in the morning. There was no undeniable proof that she had slept with Eric. But Robert didn't need any. Seeing her in stockings she had never worn for him, laughing, dancing, and kissing another man, that was humiliation enough. By 2 in the afternoon, Robert met with Amber, the escort he had arranged. For the next 2 hours, he carefully walked her through the plan, ensuring she understood every detail. Amber was everything he needed for this moment, discreet, professional, and fully on board with helping him send his message. By 4 o'clock, they arrived at his home. Before heading upstairs, Robert placed a letter on the front door, making sure it would be the first thing Amanda saw when she returned. "Amanda, last night you shattered our vows and broke my heart. The moment you chose to betray our marriage, I stopped seeing us as husband and wife. Legally, we may still be married, but emotionally that bond is gone. You wanted freedom. Now you have it. I'll be staying in the master bedroom. Your belongings have been moved to the guest rooms. My bed, my space, and my life are no longer yours to share. I hope you're happy with your choices. Your former husband, Robert." He placed his wedding ring on top of the letter, then, with deliberate precision, drove a collector's knife straight through the center of the ring, embedding it deep into the wooden door. That would be Amanda's welcome home. At 10 that night, Amanda pulled into the driveway, her stomach twisting the moment she spotted the knife lodged in the door. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she stepped closer, her breath catching as her eyes scanned the letter. Her hands trembled as she reached for the ring, her gaze darting over the words again and again, as if reading them one more time would somehow change their meaning. Reality crashed over her like a tidal wave. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Stumbling inside, she called out desperately, "Robert? Robert, please talk to me." Silence. Then a sound. Faint noises coming from upstairs. From their bedroom. Her pulse spiked. Fear, panic, and a sinking sense of dread pushed her forward. She bolted up the stairs, her heart pounding with every step. Throwing the door open, she froze. The sight before her shattered whatever hope she had left. A young woman was straddling Robert in their bed, her movements slow, intimate, unmistakable. Amanda's breath hitched. For a moment, she stood in stunned disbelief. Then came the scream. A raw, guttural wail of pain and rage. "How could you?" she sobbed, her voice breaking as fresh tears poured down her face. Robert barely acknowledged her. His expression remained cold, unmoved, as if she were nothing more than a stranger walking in on something she had no business seeing. Amanda turned and fled, her body moving on instinct, her mind unable to process what had just happened. She stumbled down the stairs, out the front door, and into her car. Blinded by tears, she barely registered the drive to her sister Christina's house. The moment she stepped inside, Amanda collapsed onto the couch, her body shaking with sobs. "I don't understand," she choked out between gasps for air. "Robert has always been so loving, so respectful. How could he do this to me?" Christina sat beside her, listening, her expression growing more serious with every word. When Amanda finally calmed enough to speak coherently, Christina folded her arms and studied her carefully. "This doesn't sound like Robert," she said slowly. "Something must have happened. What changed?" Amanda hesitated. She knew the answer. But saying it out loud? That was another thing entirely. "I don't know," she mumbled. "I guess maybe it's because I went out with a coworker last night. That's the only thing that makes sense." Christina's brows shot up. "A coworker?" Her voice sharpened. "What exactly do you mean?" "It was just dinner and dancing," Amanda stammered. "Nothing happened. It wasn't romantic." Christina's patience thinned. She sat up straighter, her jaw tightening. "Let me get this straight. You went out with another man, dressed up, left your husband home alone, and now you're shocked that he reacted like this." Amanda's face crumpled as fresh sobs racked her body. With shaking hands, she reached into her bag, pulled out Robert's letter, and handed it to her sister. Christina took it, her eyes scanning the words. And as she read, her expression darkened. Christina read the letter in silence, then let out a deep sigh. "Amanda, you made a huge mistake," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "I think you've put your marriage in real danger over one reckless decision. But maybe, just maybe, there's still a way to fix this. Stay here tonight, get some rest, and talk to him tomorrow. But be prepared for the worst. Robert isn't the kind of man who lets something like this slide." That night, Amanda lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, tormented by regrets and endless what-ifs. Meanwhile, Christina made a decision of her own. She wasn't going to let this spiral further out of control. Grabbing her phone, she quickly typed out a message to Robert, urging him to call her back. When he did, she wasted no time getting to the point. "Robert, my foolish sister is here," she began. "She told me everything that happened, and honestly, I don't blame you for how you reacted. It's clear she didn't think this through." Robert's voice was steady but ice-cold. "Thanks, Christina. You know me. I don't tolerate nonsense." Christina sighed. "Look, Robert. She knows she messed up. She's a wreck right now. Maybe you two could talk tomorrow? I'm not saying you have to forgive her, but if she didn't cross the ultimate line, maybe counseling could help. At least hear her out." There was a long pause before Robert finally responded. "Of course, Christina. She's welcome back to the house. It's still her home, after all. But she won't be sharing my space anymore." "I'm not angry, I'm hurt. I'll listen to what she has to say, but I can't promise anything. Right now, I feel as much hatred for her as I do love. It would take a miracle to fix this." "I understand, Robert," Christina said gently. "Just don't make any rash decisions. And remember, she does love you." "Thanks, Christina. Send her home when she's ready," Robert replied. "Goodbye." The next day, Robert returned from the gym around noon to find Amanda sitting nervously at the kitchen table. Her car was in the driveway, a clear sign she had been waiting for him. As he stepped inside, she attempted a smile, masking her anxiety with forced confidence. "You know we're not getting a divorce," she said, her tone firm but almost desperate. "We can work through this because we love each other." Robert ignored her, pouring himself a cup of coffee before taking a seat across from her. After a few quiet sips, he finally spoke. "Amanda, it doesn't matter if we file for divorce or not. The moment you broke our vows, our marriage ended. I don't see us as a couple anymore. You're free to be with whoever you want, and so am I." Amanda's face twisted in frustration. "Robert, I didn't do anything wrong. He's not my boyfriend and nothing happened between us," she insisted. Robert shook his head, his expression unwavering. "Amanda, you went on a date with another man. You dressed seductively for him, held his hand, danced with him, and spent the night out with him. Whether you slept with him or not is irrelevant. The moment you got into his car, you destroyed our marriage." Amanda's voice sharpened. "This doesn't have to mean anything. Just give it time and I'll come back to you." "Have you finished with that woman you were seeing?" she asked bitterly. Robert let out a short laugh, the absurdity of her question almost amusing. "You're the one who wrecked us, Amanda. The second you decided to entertain another man, you ended everything. And no, I haven't ended things with Amber. She's young, exciting, and to be honest, the best lover I've ever had. She's shown me exactly what I've been missing." Amanda's jaw dropped. "How could you say that?" Robert leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. Oh, and here's something you might want to know. While you were out with your not boyfriend, I paid a visit to his wife, Rebecca, I said, my voice sharp and deliberate. Amanda blinked, caught off guard. Did you know they have 3 kids? I continued. No? Well, Rebecca filled me in on Eric. Turns out you're the 3rd married woman he's seduced this year. Heather, the one from your office? She divorced her husband because of Eric. I let the weight of my words settle before delivering the final blow. Congratulations, Amanda. You've helped ruin 2 families and left 5 kids picking up the pieces. Her face drained of color. The truth about Eric crashed over her like a tidal wave, humiliation burning in her chest. But instead of accepting blame, she did what she always did, she lashed out at me. Robert, she snapped, her voice shaking, he's not my boyfriend. I laughed bitterly. Not your boyfriend? Really? I shook my head. Then what do you call a man you got dressed up for, danced with, kissed, and let put his hands all over you in a club? You keep insisting it was just dinner, but did you forget about the photos and videos? The ones showing your not boyfriend holding you close, groping you, kissing you like you belong to him. Amanda opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Rebecca will have those pictures soon, by the way. She deserves to know exactly what kind of man she's married to. Just like I deserve to know what kind of woman I'm married. Maybe you don't see it as cheating, but everyone else does. Her eyes flashed with anger. You're being cruel, Robert. Hurtful. Her voice trembled. How do you justify bringing another woman into our home? You crossed a line. That has to stop. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. Cruel and hurtful? I repeated, shaking my head. Amanda, do you think what you did was kind and thoughtful? You had no problem betraying me. But now that the tables have turned, suddenly I'm the one crossing a line? No. My expression hardened. And no, I'm not ending things with Amber. If you have a problem with that, you're free to leave. Amanda's desperation grew. No, Robert, she pleaded. I want you to end it with her and come back to me. I swear, I won't see anyone else. I'll be faithful. I smirked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh, you promise? I let out a sharp breath. Amanda, that's rich. You promised to forsake all others on our wedding day, too. That didn't stop you from jumping into Eric's car. Did it? Her lip trembled. If you can't handle this, I said, leaning forward, you can leave. Maybe Eric has a spare key to his studio apartment. Or you can move in with Christina, she's always ready to bail you out. Either way, don't expect me to bend over backward for you anymore. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice remained stubborn. Don't you love me, Robert? She whispered. Don't you want us to fix this? I know I made a mistake, but we can come back from this. I stared at her, my jaw tightening. Love? I repeated, the word foreign on my tongue. Maybe I do still love you. But that love has been gutted by your betrayal. You destroyed my trust. I begged you not to go, and you did it anyway. You threw me aside like I didn't matter. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before delivering the final truth. And now? Because you opened this marriage, I've discovered what it's like to be with someone who actually appreciates me. Amber makes me happy, Amanda. And I think what's really killing you is seeing me happy without you. Amanda's breath hitched. Now you know what it feels like to be discarded, I added, my voice low and firm. It's a bitter pill, isn't it? I let my words settle before continuing. As for a divorce, that's up to you. We can stay legally married and live as roommates, or I can have the papers ready by the end of the week. Either way, it doesn't matter to me. Amanda's face crumpled as she realized she had no more leverage. As the weeks passed, the financial burden of my arrangement with Amber started to weigh on me, adding to the doubts already circling in my mind. By Sunday night, when Amanda returned home, I had made up my mind. It was time to end it. I'm done with Amber, I told her, my tone flat. But don't get the wrong idea. I'm not doing this for you. I'm just finished with her. Amanda's eyes lit up with hope, her entire demeanor shifting in an instant. Robert, thank you, she breathed. I've been praying you'd come to your senses. I love you. And I'll do anything to make this right. Please, let me prove that I'm the only woman you'll ever need. I crossed my arms, unmoved. Prove it. I scoffed. Amanda, do you even understand what love means? Love isn't running off to chase excitement with another man while your husband begs you to stay. I let the words sink in before continuing. But I'll tell you what, I'll give us one last shot. I won't see anyone else while we go through couples counseling. If after that we can rebuild something real, then maybe there's a future. Relief washed over her. She lunged forward, wrapping her arms around me. pressing frantic kisses against my face. "Thank you, Robert. I swear I'll make this up to you. I love you." I pulled back slightly, my voice firm. "Don't get ahead of yourself. I haven't forgiven you. This is just a trial run." Her expression faltered slightly, but she nodded. "I've already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Phillips for Tuesday," I continued. "Twice a week. 3 months. We're going to dig through every bit of this mess. And don't think for a second that it'll be easy." What followed were 3 grueling, exhausting months of therapy. Amanda admitted to the pain she had caused, though she struggled to accept that my response, bringing another woman into our home, had been justified. But I made one thing clear: none of it would have happened if she hadn't betrayed me first. Dr. Phillips had plenty of criticism for my choices, but honestly, I didn't care. I'd do it all over again if I had to. In the end, we reconciled. But under strict conditions. We signed a postnuptial agreement stating that if Amanda ever strayed again, she would lose everything. Full transparency became non-negotiable. Her phone, emails, and messages were open for me to check at any time. I made it crystal clear that even the slightest hint of emotional or physical infidelity would be the end of our marriage. No second chances. A year later, life had settled into something resembling normalcy, though I never stopped watching Amanda. Christina remained a key ally, keeping her sister accountable, making sure she stayed on track. And while Amanda worked tirelessly to prove her love and devotion, one thought continued to haunt me. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Meanwhile, Eric's life completely unraveled. His wife took the house, won full custody of their kids, and secured hefty alimony and child support payments. The man who once saw himself as a smooth operator was now living in a rundown studio apartment, drowning in debt. He had destroyed everything over a few stolen kisses and fleeting moments of attention. And karma? It finally caught up with him. One night, Eric was found unconscious in a parking lot, beaten and bruised. No one knew exactly who did it. But guys like Eric don't stay untouchable forever.